Hi everyone, trust you all are doing well. Welcome to our next lesson, and in this lesson basically we're going to be continue where we left off. We finished with numbers and operators, and in this lesson we're going to be discussing and expanding our knowledge on strings. So basically the basics and the methods that we use on strings. Right. So the first thing that we're going to do in our JavaScript file is always we're just going to say new file number 03. Then we're just going to type in strings.js. All right, that's all we're going to do. And obviously in our index.html, we just want to link to that file as well. All right, so /03 strings, and that's it. Now we close our HTML, save it. Right, so after that we open our strings JavaScript file. All right, so we basically open this file that you just created. All right, so at first glance, strings are dealt similarly to as numbers, but when we dig a little bit deeper, we will see some notable differences. Okay, so let's create a variable. Declare, initialize it. Okay, so let's create a variable. Okay, call that just strings. As an example, and I'm just going to call this hello world. All right. So as we learned in the previous episode under variables, we know that strings comes between double or single quotes, but that's basically a string. Now we have single quotes, string. Now, just like numbers, we are declaring a variable and initialize it with a string value, and then we return the value. So basically like this, and then we return. So basically strings. Okay. So we basically returned the string value. Okay. The do's and don'ts of strings. All right. So let me create a new one. Do's, don'ts. Let me just call it like this. Right, that's equal to. All right, so if you, let's say you open with a single quote, okay, and hello, let me just use one word. You cannot close it with a double quote, okay? So if you use a single quote, finish it with a single quote. If you open it with a double quote, close it with a double quote. Otherwise, it won't work. And you cannot, let's say you only open it, you only close it with a single or double quote. As you guys can see, that won't work as my IDE gives me an error. Okay, so remember, so if you open it with double quotes, close it with double. If you open it with single, close it with single quotes. That's kind of the do's and don'ts of strings. All right, so that brings us to our next topic. All right, let's create a variable called single quote. All right, single quote equals to, just going to use an example like this, single quote. Okay, and then we declared and initialize it, and we put another one, double quote. As you guys can remember, name your variables lower camel case. Okay, double quote. Right, so now we have declared and initialized two variables, single and double quote. All right, but let me do this. Just open it with double quotes and close it with the double quotes. That's kind of the difference. All right, but now there is very little difference between the two. Which one you use is down to personal preference. But if you choose one, you just use double quotes. Some people might get confused by looking through your code. So if you pick a standard that you're only going to use single quotes, then stick with it. because in some cases you might use double quotes, but I'm going to show you those cases shortly. Right, so personal preference, you must remember, if you choose one, stick with the one. But there's advantages to use single quotes over double quotes over single quotes in certain circumstances. But let's quickly give you an example. Let's create a new variable. Let me just close this off. And create a new variable. Let new var equals to this is Jane's pencil. Okay, so let me close it off. All right, as you can see, we're already getting an error right there. Now, with single quotes, your JavaScript is your, in my case, my IDE or the browser, basically. They will come, they will read this part of the, okay, so they say, okay, this is going to be a string, so I'm looking for the end of the string, and they say, okay, this is the end of the string, so this is a string, but they will be like, but what is this? Because here you're closing it off, and there's another string right there, so the browser gets confused. What is this? But you actually, this is Jane's pencil. You actually want to bring out this whole part of the string. Okay, but in order to fix that, you can do it like this. All right, we can encapsulate it with double quotes. Okay, so basically this, let me just do this. Okay, and if we call in new var, you will see it doesn't give us an error, it actually returns the string for us. All right, but now if you use single quotes, what you can do is it's called escaping a character in a string. So in order to do that, now in order to escape this character, what we do is we place a backslash like that. All right. So basically what this does is the browser will look at like, okay, so we want to recognize this as part of the string and not a closing end of the string. All right. So as you can see, it doesn't give us an error. So this is called escaping a character. All right. So let's quickly, so let's even do this. We put in there double quotes like this. All right. So if we refresh the browser and go in here, say new var, you can see now we have a problem. But before we do that, let's just quickly just show you guys this. So if we go into new var now, you can see it returns the value. Basically, it escaped that character for us so that it can actually be part of the string. Okay, so that is two ways of doing it. So if we just copy this down and let's just do this, we can have it double quotes like this. That also escapes the character, but declared it twice. So let new var 2. Okay, so let's refresh that. Okay, so this is a new variable because in let you cannot declare the same variable twice. But if you use var like the old way, you can do that, but it is not recommended. Okay, so new var 2, as you can see, it returns the same thing, and new var, as you can see, it returns the same thing. So that is called escaping the character. You can use if you use single quotes, remember, if you do that, and if you use double quotes, you can do that as well. Okay. Now let's close this one. So let's comment that out. Right. Now the next part brings us to concatenating strings. Now concatenate is basically just a fancy programming word that simply means joining together. All right. So what we want to do is we want to join two strings together in JavaScript. And in order to do that, we use the plus operator. Right. So let's declare, Let's just use a const keyword. So it means it's a constant. It means we cannot change it or modify it later. But we can modify. Let me back up there. It's a constant, meaning you cannot change it. Okay. Let me do this one. String 1. Just gonna call this one hello. Okay. And another constant, string 2. I'm typing it out, but I will show you how you normally would type them, because people shorten things. So if you just say like str, okay, this is shortened for string. Okay. But I just want to type it out so we're not going to get confused by fancy words and stuff like that. All right. Now, how do we join strings together? All right. So we're just going to create a new variable called join string. Let me do str joined, and then we're going to say equal to string 1 plus string 2. All right. You guys remember from when we did the numbers, we calculated the one number and the other number. Basically, what will happen now is, my spelling. All right. So basically, what now happens is with the plus symbol, the plus operator, basically we can join the strings together. All right. So let's see how. Let's return it. Yeah, joined. Right, so basically what we can do, I'll just kind of introduce you. I already explained it before. There's a term that we can use, console.log. Okay, and we can log that string joined, and let's. All right, so if we press the logs here, highlighted, you can see it returns us the string of hello world. But now we have a problem. We actually want some space between the two. In order to do that, what we do is we just create this with a space, and then we add another plus operator. So if we do that, so basically if let's just remove the spacing like this, because this is what you're normally going to do. So as you can see, there's no space, but if we add, like, let's say a dot, as you can see, it adds a dot. And if we want to add space, you can see it adds the space right there. Okay, cool and easy to do. All right. So there's basically what it does. It actually logs whatever you want to your development tools. As you can see, it logged us the value right there. But what if we don't want to add the plus symbols and things like that? There's another way to actually concatenate two strings. It's another type of string syntax that we use in JavaScript that is called template literals or template strings. Depends which one you like to use. All right. So in order to do that, so this is the first one. Now the second one is we're going to call it like this. You know what? Let me comment this out for you guys and just go up. Let's create a new one called template literals, or just type in all template strings. Okay, so that you guys can have it. Okay, so how does it work? So let's create a new variable. Let name equal to John, our favorite guy, John Doe. And let's give John an age equals to 29. Okay, so let greeting, right, equals to sorry about that. All right, the next one is we're going to create a greeting. Now, in order to use template literals, basically what it is, let me just call it template strings for short. Basically, it's 2 backticks right there. Okay, so how do you create that? So basically, if you see on your keyboard, you will see this symbol. Just type it in there. This symbol right there. Now, if you press Shift in that symbol, it will create this one. But on the same part, you can just double click and it will create you those 2 strings, backticks. Now, in order to use them in JavaScript, we can just use them like this. And we say, hi, my name is, okay, then you create a $sign, open and closing curly brackets and the variable name. All right, I just changed this to first name. All right, so we type in, hi, my name is the first name variable. And reason why I'm using the single quote mark there is so that we can see that you can actually do this all in JavaScript. And then in the template strings actually. And then here's I am. Then we do another $sign, open and closing curly brackets. Then we put in the age variable. We put years. And just do this. Years old. I want to do the old in double quotes. Okay. So let's save that. And then we console.log greeting. Okay. Now, as you guys can see, it returns, hi, my name is John Doe and I'm 29 years old with the double quotes. Basically what it does, it respects the spaces between the characters and it respects the single quote marks and the double quote marks. So it won't give you any error. So if you want to use multiple things, if you want to type out a sentence or anything like that, use template strings, those so you don't have to worry about escaping characters or making sure you have to open it with double quotes or single quotes. Kind of very handy to do. All right, so let's move on. All right, brings us to our next topic, methods. Methods in string methods. Let's just type in string methods. Okay. Right, some useful string methods that we have. Now that we have looked at this, what a string is, and let's see how useful operations we can do and on strings with built-in methods. All right, so some of the built-in methods that we have, let's start with the first one. All right, let's create another one. Let's use const first name. Let's use that first name again. That equal to John Doe. we love John Doe. Now, the thing is, what we can do is we can find the length of a string. Okay, so basically, if this is now basically a string, now a string variable becomes a string object instance. As a result, we have a large number of properties and methods available to it. Now, one of them is the string length that we're just going to discuss right now. So basically, let's console.log. So basically, logging it to the console, the developer console. So first name dot length. Right? So if we do that, now if we do that and we close it, as you can see, it returns a value of 8. Now if we count it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so it returns us the value of 8. Now the reason you might want to know this, let's say you have a username input field on a form. Let's say you're trying to sign up and create a form, so the user must type in their first name, last name, and their username and their password and things like it in order to register on a website. Now the problem is that you only want that to only be a maximum of 5 characters, right? So in order to check how many characters there is, there's other methods. Obviously, if you use the validation of HTML, you can prevent this, but just for argument's sake, we want to check that so that you can in real time update the user. Listen, you have 6 characters left, or 4 characters left, or 2 characters left. Okay, so in order to do that, we can use the string length to just check how long the username is. Just an example. All right, let's move on to our next string method. Let's just call this one length property. Okay, let's just comment this out. Brings us to our next one. All right, let's say you want to retrieve a specific string character. That's one thing that we can do. You can return any character inside a string by using the square bracket notation. This means we include a square bracket. So let's quickly do this. Let's create a new variable. Let IDE, it's a code editor. Let code editor equal to VS code. Just like this. I'm just going to use this as an example. All right. So what we can do is we can do console. Let's log to the console. .log. There's a shortcut, I think, CLG. Yes. It gives us in VS Code, if we type in CLG, emit, and you just enter, you can actually give you the whole console log. So with us, what we're going to do is we're going to do the code editor. All right. And then the square bracket notation. Now, the square bracket notation is where we want to say, like, listen, which character are we looking for? Now, remember, the computer counts from 0 upwards. Okay, so basically this one is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if we type in the, let's say, number 4, let's see what happens. You see it returns the value of D, because it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. It counts from 0. Okay, so you must remember that computer comes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5. Right, in our instance, we want the E, the letter on the end there. So it's 1, 2, 3. Right, so I don't know how many letters there are, but the reason why I'm saying that is because now we know, so we can return the E right there because we have just counted manually. But what if you cannot count manually? You don't know how many characters there are. So let's just quickly add just a couple of random ones right there. And for instance, like, you don't know what the last character is. You didn't know how to count them, right? So basically what we can do now in this instance, right, in order to do that, we can actually lock it to the console. So CLG, just for short, so I can type quickly. So code editor, and then we open our square brackets, but we're going to type in code editor again. And you remember the length property from before. We can use it, but you see what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 1, because the computer counts from 0, 1, 2, 3. We're just going to subtract 1, but let me show you. So as you can see, it returns the value of W, but let's say we change it to X. You can see it returns the value of X. How cool is that? So basically, if we didn't add the -1, it will give us undefined, because this part right here calculates the whole string, but it doesn't count from 0. But if we add the -1, so let me just give you the string length. Let's console log CLG, and just get CLG, and we just do code editor editor.length. Right, let me just didn't spell this right. As you can see, it returns the value of 21. So basically there is 21 characters right there. But now the problem is, if we count them manually, you will see it will count only 20 because it counts from 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so just remember that. So in order to calculate correctly, you need to take into account to take -1 because it counts from 0. Okay, it was clear as mud. All right, just rewatch the video if you play around with it, because if you start playing around with it, you will actually learn a little bit more than what I've just said. Just type in your own things and just console log things to the console, development tools, whatever browser you use, and just play around with it. It might stick a little bit better. The thing about coding is the more you practice, the more you start getting your hands dirty with the code, the better it actually becomes as a programmer. Because in the beginning, there's a lot of theory and things like that, and sometimes it just doesn't stick that well. But as soon as you start coding your own things and playing around with it, you can actually sink in a little bit better. Okay, now the thing is, let's move on to our next part. And let's say, for instance, you want to find a substring inside a string and extract that string. Sometimes you will want to find a smaller string in a present inside a larger one. This can be done by using the indexOf method, which takes a single parameter, the substring you want to search for. Okay, so if the substring is found inside the main string, it returns a number representing the index of that substring, which character number of the main string the substring is at. Okay, so if the substring is not found, basically it will return a value of -1. Now that is a lot of blah 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 from my side, so let's quickly see how that all works. Let me just type in here, finding substring. Okay, so how do we do that? So let some name equal to, let's create a string to fish. Okay, fish. Let's do this. Fish and chops. Fish and chops. Okay, let's do fish and chops. Okay, let some name equal to fish and chops. Now what we can do is let's console log this to the browser. Right, so if we type in some name, okay, let me add the dot notation, index of, okay, what is the index of n? Okay, so we want to know what the index of n is. So as you can see, it returns the value of 4. But remember, the computer counts from 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's say fish is 0, I is 1, S is 2, H is 3, and N is 4. So basically what it did now for us, it returns the value of N at the index number of 4. But what if we want to extract chops? All right, so let's quickly do that. Say chops. Okay, but I will show you guys. Let's just save it, and you can see it returns a value of -1, meaning it cannot find it. And now you might scratch your head, but there is chops in there. But you have to remember it is case sensitive. So it will only find chops it's looking for the exact same words, meaning it is case sensitive. All right. So now, as you can see, it returns the value where it starts of number 5. Okay. Very, very cool. All right. So that is how you can find something in the index of number 5. All right. So the next one and that we have is, we call it the slice method. Right. Now, when you want to know where this, as soon as we know, in this case, we know where the substring starts inside the string. And you know that at which character you want to end it. Then we can use the slice to basically extract chops from the fish and symbol. All right. So how do we do that? Okay. So let's quickly keep this. Just comment this out. Let's just copy that, bring it here, and comment it out. So we know it starts at number 5 because we console log that to the browser. All right. So let's console log that to the browser. So in order to do that, some name dot slice. Okay, so we want to slice it. We want to start at number 5. So if we reload, as you guys can see, we got our chops right there. Quite handy. Now the first parameter, basically in the slice method, let's just quickly make a comment. The slice have 2 parameters. Okay, it's got the first parameter and a second parameter. The second parameter is optional. Then just use 2 zeros. All right. The first parameter is the character position we want to start extracting at. And the second one is the character position after the last one to be extracted. So the slice happens from the first position up to, but not including, the last position. The starting index is for our case number 5. The second parameter, since we want basically everything from 5, we didn't include it. Basically, that includes the equal to the length of the string that's being returned. Okay. Also, if you want to extract all the remaining characters like we've done now, after a certain character, we don't have to include the second parameter. Instead, we only need to include the character position, and that's it. Okay. Right, so let's move on to the next one. That is slicing and dicing. Right, keeping it kind of short. The next one is changing case. Right, so let some just some random text. Okay, so we gave a string. My dog. It's just kind of just random characters. As you can see, and if we console log some CLG, some van, if we console log it, you will see the cases are not in order. Kind of looks funky. All right. So with strings, we have 2 methods that we can use. We can use the first one is called toLowerCase. toLowerCase. Okay. And the other one that we have is called toUpperCase. Okay. So those are the 2 methods that we can use. So in order for us to do this, we can just call this toLowerCase. Okay. Okay, so if we refresh the browser, you can see like that. And if we call this, just copying it down and commenting it out, we can leave it, and we can just call this toUpperCase. Right, so as you can see, it's kind of self-explanatory. So basically, it lower the cases and it upper the cases. It didn't matter what the typing of the text were. Okay, right. So that's one string method that we have. So let's just comment this one out. Let's move on to the next one. Now let's say you want to update some parts of a string. Okay, let's say you want to do that. Basically what we can do is we can replace one substring value inside a string with another while using the replace method. It takes two parameters, the string you want to replace and the string you want to replace it with. All right, so let's create a new variable. So we're gonna get so used to creating variables. All right, so let's create a variable called my string, just as an example, and we call this happy town. Right. Okay, so if we console log my string, okay, then you will see it returns the value of happy town. Now, what if we want to replace the town with city? Okay, so we can put dot notation, then we put in replace. Okay, now the first premise we say, this is the string we want to replace. Okay, so we want to replace town. Okay, and we want to replace it with city. Can we do that? As you can see, if we check the browser, you can see it replaced the town with the city. But remember, let's show you, refresh. You can see it didn't do anything because remember, it is case sensitive. As you can see, it returned the value of city right there. Case sensitive, guys, case sensitive. All right. Now, there's some other methods. I'm just quickly going to go through them. This is the useful ones that you guys are going to use a lot. All right. But there's some other ones that I just wanted to just bring by your attention so that you guys can have them. All right. Let's create a new variable. I'm just going to call it str equals to, I'm just going to create some spaces. Let's just create this space. John. Okay, so on JJ and console CLG STR. Okay, so as you can see, there's some spacing in there. Now, sometimes what you want to do is you don't want to have spaces in the values if you want to store it in a database. Basically, you want to remove all the white space, all the tabs, and all that kind of things. So in order to do that, there's a useful string method that we have in JavaScript, and its name is called trim. Basically, what it does, it removes white spaces from both ends of the string, and basically the white space is like characters like spaces, tabs, no breaks, etc. And all line terminator characters like the LF, CR. Basically, let me just show you those characters quickly. So basically, if you have /n or /r, it removes all those kind of characters as well. So let's say dot trim, right? So if we do that, right, the best way to show you guys, now basically I added some space there and some space there. So if I come in my browser and I highlight it, you can see it kind of highlights that spacing right there. And if we add the trim, now refresh the browser, and if I try to highlight, you can see it removed the spacing on the right or the left. Right. So basically, there's another two methods on top of the trim. So you can have the trim end. Okay, so let's do the trim end. So let me just clear this. So basically, it removes the white space at the end. Okay, and then you can do trim start. refresh. As you can see, it removed the white spacing from the front, but didn't do it from the end. And there's synonymous ones, trim left or trim right. So trim end, the one that was basically also known as trim right, and trim start, also known as trim left. Okay, useful method to have. Okay, right, so that brings us to an end of this lesson. Thank you guys for watching. There's some more useful tips, and if you just search a browser under Mozilla Foundation for string methods, you guys can have some extra reading material there regarding other string methods that you can use. But these are the ones that you're going to find useful and going to need a lot of them in your coding career. Thank you guys for watching, and if you liked the video, please give it a like. If you didn't like it, please give it a thumbs down and some constructive feedback so that I can improve these videos. I kind of want to put a lot of information so that you guys can come to it later and watch it over, because I remember when I learned programming, the information that was available was not enough information, if I can say, in the lessons while I was learning. It was kind of skimmed down and not enough to learn more of most of the things. And then you see some other codes, you've kind of wondered what this is about and stuff like that. So that's why I kind of make these videos long, so that you guys can learn all that you have to learn, the necessary things about the topic. All right. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. In the next video, we basically going to learn about arrays. As you guys remember, in this episode that we had the variables, the different types of variables, we were discussing briefly about arrays, and we're just going to be discussing more about them, the properties and the methods that you can use on arrays. All right. Thank you guys, and see you in the next one. Cheers. Goodbye.